Story 1. On February 26, 2019, a man named Lee Hee-jin reported to the Donggan police station in Anyang City. He was concerned about losing contact with his parents, his 62-year-old father and 58-year-old mother, and sought police assistance in finding them. For those familiar with our previous coverage of South Korean cases, you'll understand the typical approach of the Korean police. They often show minimal concern even for missing children, let alone elderly adults. This case proved no different. The police were notably indifferent to Hee-jin's report. Based on their experience, cases of two elderly people simultaneously going missing were extremely rare. Most elderly missing persons cases were usually misunderstandings or, at worst, medical emergencies while out. However, Hee-jin insisted his parents were in perfect health, with no underlying conditions that could cause sudden death. Even if they were ill, the probability of both falling ill simultaneously was practically impossible. After consideration, the police suggested that Hee-jin's parents had likely just gone on a trip or had some business without informing the family. They told him to wait at home for news. This waiting period stretched over 2 weeks. Finally, on March 16th, still unable to contact his parents, Hee-jin was forced to return to the police station for a second time. This time, the police acted with surprising speed. Just 2 days later, on March 18th, they discovered a horrifying scene at the Hyundai apartment complex in Gwangyang, Donggan District. In a wall cabinet, they found the heavily decomposed body of Soon-ja, Hee-jin's mother. The tragedy didn't end there. That same afternoon, a report came in from rural Pyeongtaek. A local warehouse manager reported an overwhelming stench that villagers had been noticing for days. When they investigated, they found an elderly man's body in a refrigerator. DNA tests later confirmed it was Lee Deok-ju, Hee-jin's father. These two horrifying discoveries on the same day pushed Hee-jin to the brink of collapse. But what shocked him even more was the information in the forensic report. What did this report reveal? Without question, Deok-ju and Soon-ja had been brutally murdered. Their bodies were covered in so many wounds that forensic experts couldn't determine the exact cause of death. This wasn't simply a murder. It was a prolonged torture session that continued until both victims drew their final breaths. The deaths were determined to have occurred on February 25th, just 1 day before Hee-jin first went to the police station. A bitter truth emerged. If the police had taken the initial report seriously, they might have collected more crucial evidence, even though they couldn't have saved the victims. However, the investigators seemed unfazed by this oversight. To them, this appeared to be a typical revenge case. All details pointed in one direction. They believed that by following the victim's social connections, the perpetrator's identity would soon be revealed. The investigation team split into 2 groups, one investigating the area around the crime scenes for potential witnesses, while the other began examining the victims' relationships. Sure enough, near the warehouse where Deok-ju's body was found, several villagers reported possibly seeing the perpetrator. The specific situation was described as follows. On the evening of February 25th, the day of the deaths, there was an unpleasant odor near the warehouse. Some curious villagers followed the smell to investigate. They discovered a strange man burning a bag behind the warehouse. Logically, burning trash in a remote area isn't a major offense. At worst, it might warrant a warning. However, oddly enough, the stranger fled in panic before the villagers could say anything, disappearing almost instantly. Although the villagers found this strange, it was dark, and nothing serious seemed to have occurred, so they dismissed it. Looking back, they realized this mysterious man could very well have been the murderer. The villagers told police the man wasn't tall, was somewhat overweight, and judging by his running speed, wasn't very athletic, likely not a local farmer. This lead about the mysterious man was quickly passed to the team investigating the victim's social connections. But a puzzling detail emerged. No one, from family members to neighbors, could recall anyone matching that description. Instead, they all insisted that the Lee couple lived very privately and always treated everyone well. No one could imagine them being involved in such a bloody revenge killing. However, Hee-jin, the victim's son, had a completely different perspective. As soon as he learned about the burned bag, he suggested that police investigate this as a robbery murder. His reason made the investigators jump. On that fateful morning of February 25th, Hee-jin had just sold his Bugatti Veyron, and had given his parents 500 million won, about $400,000, in cash in a bag for safekeeping. Just hours later, they were brutally murdered. And now, a stranger was caught burning a suspicious bag. Could this really be just a coincidence? Upon learning this information, police immediately researched the couple's apartment. The investigation results further supported Hee-jin's theory. There was no trace of the 500 million won or the bag containing it. Checking the victim's bank accounts revealed no unusual transactions involving such a large sum. All signs pointed to this being a premeditated robbery. Notably, information about Hee-jin selling his car was known to very few people, suggesting the perpetrator was likely someone familiar with the family. However, another strange detail caught the investigators' attention. Why did the killer preserve Mr. Deokja's body in a refrigerator in a rural Pyeongtaek warehouse, while leaving Mrs. Sunja's body to decompose naturally in the apartment wall cabinet in Anyang? Perhaps this wasn't simply a robbery. This situation could be explained in several ways. Maybe the killer acted alone and couldn't transport both bodies, or the vehicle was too small, or perhaps they intended to move both, but encountered an unexpected situation. However, the Korean investigators proposed a bolder theory. They suggested that leaving Sunja's body to decompose naturally wasn't random. It could have been intentional revenge. Compared to Deokju, it seemed the killer harbored a deeper hatred for Sunja. All clues pointed to one conclusion. The killer must be someone familiar who had a personal vendetta against Sunja. But just then, an investigator noticed a major contradiction in the entire story. He asked his colleagues, "When you heard about Hee-jin selling his supercar, didn't you notice something? He must be extremely wealthy. So why sell the car at this time?" When asked about the reason for selling the car, Hee-jin casually replied, "I have many nice cars." Selling a Bugatti Veyron was simply getting rid of excess. Nothing special. This seemed to be the issue. If Hee-jin was that wealthy, why were his parents living in such an ordinary apartment? In previous cases, whenever wealthy people lived so discreetly, it was usually to hide something. So, was this family concealing some unspeakable secret? With this in mind, the investigator checked the Lee family's background. The findings were startling. The Lee couple didn't just have Hee-jin as their only child. Hee-jin had an older brother named Hee-moon. As soon as this name was mentioned, the scattered pieces of the case began falling into place. To the investigators, the fact that Hee-moon's parents became victims of a massacre seemed almost unsurprising. Wondering why? Let me tell you the story behind Hee-moon's name. From October 2008, South Korea fell into an economic crisis that pushed many citizens into financial hardship. During this time, many people turned to the stock market and investment funds as a lifeline, hoping to find a source of income to improve their lives. Hee-moon emerged as a rising star. He quickly earned glamorous titles in the financial world. The Warren Buffett of Korea, Cheongdam's #1 stock trader, Korea's most experienced investment master. His reputation grew rapidly in Seoul's financial circles. By 2014, Lee Hee-moon's name had spread beyond investment circles. He became a familiar face on major media outlets, from the Korean Economic Channel to various television stations. Lee Hee-moon had built a perfect image of a businessman, young, talented, and dazzlingly wealthy. Hee-moon claimed to have graduated from the English Literature Department of a prestigious private university in Seoul. During his college years, he said his exceptional tutoring skills earned him about 5 million won, about $4,000 monthly. However, due to his sharp financial mind after graduation, he didn't pursue an English-related career, but went straight into investing. As a result, he achieved a dramatic class jump in less than 10 years. Not only did he buy a mansion in Seoul's wealthy Gangnam district with cash, but he also owned luxury vehicles including Bugatti, Lamborghini, Rolls-Royce, and Bentley. But all of this wasn't what really caught ordinary people's attention. What truly made Hee-moon notable was his apparent dedication to helping common people, freely sharing his investment expertise. He regularly shared his investment secrets on television shows, and even helped manage finances for some devoted followers. Just imagine, if a renowned, wealthy, successful person offered to manage your finances, wouldn't you jump at the opportunity? As word spread, many people wanted Hee-moon to help them make money. Faced with this rising investment wave, he reluctantly opened an investment consulting company to handle these matters. For more cautious investors who preferred to trade themselves, Heemoon generously shared lists of guaranteed profitable stocks. The Lee family quickly turned this opportunity into gold when younger brother, Hee-jin, established a P2P lending company to help those who wanted to invest but lacked funds. In a brief period, the brothers accumulated a massive fortune of over 20 billion won, about $16 million. But behind the glamour of a stock market mogul lay a dark truth no one expected. All investors who trusted him gradually fell into complete bankruptcy. When some victims became aware and began investigating Heemoon, they discovered a shocking truth. His entire background was fabricated. Not a single detail of his past was real. For instance, he claimed to have graduated from a prestigious university, but in reality, he had never even attended college. His social media posts flaunting his wealth were all fabricated. He claimed he was about to become the distributor for Lamborghini and Bugatti in South Korea. Upon verification, due to South Korea's small market size, Lamborghini had never considered establishing a new distributor there. Even more outrageous was when in summer 2016, Heemoon posted on Facebook claiming he had just landed at an airport in China and was preparing to have dinner with a high-ranking official from Jiangsu province. At the time, almost no one questioned this, only feeling impressed by Heemoon's connections. It wasn't until he was caught and imprisoned for fraud and illegal trading that this story resurfaced online. Chinese authorities were forced to deny the claims, stating that Jiangsu had no such official that Heemoon had mentioned. Moreover, the Chinese airport photo he posted was simply downloaded from the internet. In short, the entire post was his fabrication. And so, Heemoon's empire completely collapsed. Unfortunately, the investors he deceived collapsed with him. Thousands of people lost their entire investments, and many were left with enormous debts. Some victims, unable to cope, tragically ended their lives in despair. One could imagine that if Heemoon hadn't been imprisoned, he might have been killed by his victims. Therefore, it wasn't surprising that some people, unable to take revenge on him directly, might turn their anger towards his parents. However, if this was truly the case, solving the crime would be extremely difficult, because Heemoon had deceived so many people. Just as the police were struggling with this dilemma, the officer who had earlier discovered the contradiction proposed an idea. The reporter, Hee-jin, had been concealing his brother's identity to hide their past and hadn't told the police about his brother. Now that this veil had been lifted, there was no need for secrecy anymore. Perhaps now he would share more useful information for solving the case. This officer's intuition proved correct. When investigators frankly confronted the truth, Hee-jin indeed revealed more information, like a dam breaking. He disclosed that after his brother Heemoon went to prison, although they had returned some illegal funds, the family still retained significant cash and assets. This was why they had to live discreetly, avoiding attention from curious eyes. Moreover, since his brother had been in prison for some time, he initially didn't think his parents' deaths were related to this matter. In short, he was just trying to justify why he hadn't previously disclosed everything. After these meaningless explanations, Hee-jin mentioned something strange that made people think. On February 25th, the night of the murders, he had received a message from his mother on a messaging app. His mother said she had just met a successful Harvard graduate businessman named Kim Young-ho and wanted Hee-jin to arrange time to meet him to discuss potential business cooperation. So, Hee-jin had added Young-ho as a contact and planned to chat online first with the intention of meeting in person if there was potential for cooperation. Unexpectedly, during their conversation, Hee-jin accidentally clicked the video call button and the other party connected. At that moment, Hee-jin caught a glimpse of Young-ho's round, full face. Initially, this seemed like a perfectly normal occurrence. But the strange thing was, hadn't forensics determined that both victims were murdered on the evening of February 25th? How could Soonja have sent messages to Hee-jin? At this point, there were only two possibilities. Either forensics had incorrectly determined the time of death, or the person messaging Hee-jin was the killer. If it was the latter, this self-proclaimed Kim Young-ho could very well be the murderer. The attempt to meet Hee-jin might have been intended to kill him too, with revenge against the family as the motive. Therefore, police immediately created a sketch based on Hee-jin's description and showed it to the villagers who had seen the suspect. Everyone agreed that the person in the sketch looked quite similar to the mysterious man who had burned the bag near the warehouse on the night of the murders. With the suspect's appearance and build now identified, police used this information to check surveillance cameras around the crime scene. They quickly spotted the suspect in street camera footage. When analyzing the surveillance video carefully, investigators discovered a crucial detail. The suspect didn't act alone, but had 3 accomplices. However, due to poor image quality, police could only identify and arrest the mastermind, Kim Dae-yoon, the person who had impersonated Kim Young-ho to approach the victim's family through the messaging app. Contrary to investigators' expectations of a hardened criminal, Dae-yoon proved quite forthcoming. Immediately after his arrest, he admitted to all his crimes and willingly revealed his motives. But the story he told was even more shocking than his crimes. As police had suspected, Dae-yoon was one of Hee-moon's countless victims. However, unlike most of those who were deceived, he wasn't an ordinary victim. Dae-yoon came from a privileged background, having completed both his bachelor's and master's degrees in the United States. Afterward, he successfully established a yacht rental company there and thrived for many years. Until August 2017, when tragedy struck, his business failed, his marriage fell apart, forcing him to return to South Korea. After returning home, Dae-yoon planned to use his remaining assets to rebuild his career, continuing the yacht rental business in the Gyeonggi area. Unexpectedly, he happened to meet Hee-moon. Since Dae-yoon was looking for investors at the time, Hee-moon, with his wealth and influence, became someone he wanted to impress. As a result, he not only participated in Hee-moon's financial projects, but even gave Hee-moon's father 20 million won, about $16,000, as spending money. Finally, with Hee-moon's collapse, Dae-yoon, who had returned from America hoping to rebuild his life, was also scammed into complete bankruptcy. But since Hee-moon was already sentenced to prison, Dae-yoon couldn't take revenge on him directly and decided to target his family instead. However, due to Dae-yoon's poor physical condition, to ensure safety, he claimed to have hired 3 young Korean Chinese men online. Dae-yoon stated that these 3 men were the who actually killed the elderly Lee couple, while he only handled planning and crime scene cleanup. Immediately after the murders, the 3 accomplices allegedly flew back to Jilin Province, China. Although this temporarily prevented South Korean police from arresting all suspects, it didn't affect their determination of Dae-yoon as the primary perpetrator. Therefore, logically, the next step would be the standard trial process. But what investigators didn't expect was that when detailed information about the murders of the elderly Lee couple was reported by the media, it sparked major controversy. Instead of condemning Dae-yoon's brutal actions, the South Korean public unanimously voiced support and called for the court to reduce his punishment. This strange reaction led many to question. No matter how despicable Hee-moon was, his parents were innocent, so how could the Korean public be so blind? But the truth behind this reaction was even more shocking. Hee-moon's financial empire was actually a family business, where each member played a role in the fraud scheme. His parents weren't merely innocent bystanders, but actively participated in management. Particularly Soon-ja, the supposedly innocent mother, regularly appeared on her son's paid channel, using her image as a respectable mother to persuade and lure people into investing in the stocks their family promoted. After the scheme was exposed, Soon-ja was also convicted, but only received a suspended sentence and a fine of 50 million won, about $40,000. Simply put, the elderly couple were accomplices to their son's crimes. However, when faced with public criticism online, the couple not only didn't apologize but coldly declared that no one in all of South Korea studies stocks as seriously as our son, implying that convicting Hee-moon of fraud was unjust. Now, you understand why public opinion sided with Dae-yoon, don't you? Just when the case seemed to be reaching its conclusion, an unexpected twist emerged. The 3 Korean Chinese accomplices, after returning to China, suddenly posted shocking accusations about Dae-yoon. If Hee-moon was a financial fraudster, Dae-yoon was even more vicious. He deceived people to take lives. Dae-yoon's previous statements about being only the mastermind, while the other 3 were the direct perpetrators, suddenly collapsed. These 3 individuals revealed the frightening truth behind the murders. Everything began about a month before the tragedy, when Dae-yoon posted a job listing for security guards online. The 3 young men were attracted by promises of an easy job with attractive pay, applied, and were quickly hired. But when they completed all procedures and made the long journey to South Korea, Day Yuan's first request wasn't normal security work. It was the horrifying task of transporting two elderly corpses to a remote warehouse in the countryside. Fortunately, these three young men weren't foolish. When they discovered they were transporting corpses, they immediately refused Day Yuan's request and fled back to their country. In other words, the three supposed accomplices were actually laborers whom Daeun had lured from China to South Korea, and they were completely innocent in the massacre. All crimes were committed by him alone. However, South Korean police couldn't hastily believe these accusations. While requesting China's cooperation in extraditing the three men, they thoroughly investigated the group's movements during their time in South Korea. What they discovered supported the three men's testimonies. None of them had received any money from Daeun. In fact, one of them had to borrow 200,000 won, about $160, from local friends just to buy a plane ticket home. This detail completely contradicted Day Yuan's claim about hiring them to commit murder. But this discovery led to a bigger question. If Kim Daeun had lied about these three men's roles, was his entire previous confession reliable? Were there other secrets behind the case waiting to be revealed? Following this line of investigation, sure enough, even the revenge-killing story was a lie. Daeun had committed this crime for different reasons. For over a year prior, he had posed as a private detective to approach victims of Imun's fraud, particularly those who had gone to his house to demand compensation, and indirectly gathered information about the current personnel structure and financial situation of Imun's family. He even stalked the parents, installing tracking devices and wiretaps in their car. Moreover, as mentioned earlier, on the morning of the murders, Hee-jin had given his parents 500 million won from selling the car, and this money eventually disappeared. Some might think that taking the money while seeking revenge was convenient. Why waste it? The issue was the timing was too precise. Could this really be coincidental? Later, police discovered a crucial detail. Hee-jin's Bugatti Veyron had actually sold for 1.5 billion won, about $1.2 million. He had given his parents 500 million won, keeping 1 billion won, about $800,000 for himself. His parents knew about this. If his parents knew, then Daeun could have known through his wiretapping devices. That's why after the murders, he immediately tried to meet Hee-jin. The purpose was likely to steal the remaining 1 billion won. While coordinating to meet Hee-jin in person, Daeun was also in contact with a broker to prepare for an escape to the Philippines at any moment. Putting everything together, police concluded that Daeun was the sole perpetrator of this crime, and his true motive was robbery. Consequently, the Suwon Supreme Court indicted Kim Daeun on multiple charges including robbery, murder, corpse disposal, and illegal trespassing. He was ultimately sentenced to life imprisonment in the first trial. Although he appealed in 2021, the Supreme Court rejected his appeal and upheld the original sentence. Notably, by this time, Hee-moon, who had been convicted of fraud, had been released after serving his prison term. Logically, several years in prison and his parents' horrific deaths should have taught him a lesson and led him to reform his life. Unexpectedly, after laying low for a while, Hee-moon resurfaced and began using Bitcoin to commit fraud. After his crimes were discovered, he was arrested again in September 2023. However, this time, he was quickly released on bail. Perhaps the most bitter aspect of this story is that after his release from prison, Lee Hee-moon seemed unaffected by his dark past and his parents' deaths. Using his remaining wealth, he married a female idol, built a family, and enjoyed a luxurious lifestyle. This case isn't just a tragedy about greed and revenge, but also a warning about how people can lose their humanity for money. Some commit fraud without remorse, others readily kill for robbery, leaving permanent scars on society. Story 2. July 12, 1994 in the morning, Zhao Dafu, a construction worker from Jiangku village in Yongxing Town, Dazhou City, Sichuan Province, China, went to work as usual. He returned home alone that evening to find his wife Xiao Shuaqin and their two sons missing. Initially, Dafu assumed his wife had taken the children to visit her parents. However, the next day his neighbor, Mrs. Ma, shared some strange news. Mrs. Ma explained that Shuaqin had borrowed a pair of white plastic sandals from her the previous morning, saying she planned to go to the market. The children, not wanting to stay home, had insisted on accompanying their mother. After hearing this, Dafu instinctively thought his wife must have taken the children to stay at her parents' house after shopping. He quickly ate breakfast and cycled to his in-laws' home. By noon, despite asking everywhere and checking with relatives and friends, Dafu couldn't find any trace of his family. A sense of foreboding began to grow. Worried, Dafu went to the town market to inquire. The locals there said they hadn't seen Shua Qin or the two boys anywhere. At this point, a Jiangku villager named Gao Yuankue provided crucial information. Gao said that on the day Shua Qin disappeared, she had also gone to the town market. On her way home, she had encountered Dafu's two sons, Zhao Yongyong and Zhao Yongquan. The brothers were sitting on a bench by the road. Gao recognized them and invited them to return to Jiangku village together. But the older brother Yongyong said they were waiting for their mother to return. So Gao left and went back to the village. Following Gao's description, Dafu and some relatives went to the market to find the spot where the two brothers had stopped. Although they didn't discover anything unusual, some nearby households raised their suspicions. According to village rumors, these families had members previously involved in child abductions. Therefore, Dafu and others suspected that Shua Qin and the children might have been kidnapped. After receiving Zhao Dafu's report, local police investigated these households. The most suspicious among them was a man named Pu Jijian, commonly known as Pu Sanwa by locals. Unfortunately, when police searched Pu's entire house, they found no related evidence or traces. This investigation result deeply disappointed Dafu. He still couldn't understand why his wife and children had suddenly vanished. Without evidence of kidnapping, local police could only investigate the case as a voluntary disappearance. However, since people leaving their homes was quite common in rural Dazhou at that time, the local police station couldn't allocate sufficient resources to search for Shua Qin and the children. Since his family's disappearance, Dafu lost all focus on work. Cycling around searching for them became his primary concern each morning. In his worried and disappointed state, Zhao Dafu even suspected his in-laws might be hiding his family. However, Xiao Shuaqin's family was equally worried. According to Shuaqin's sister, their family had also searched many times. As her sister, she dreamed of Shuaqin's return even in her sleep. After more than 2 months of searching, Dafu fell into complete despair. He spent his days drinking to dull the pain, but the heartache wouldn't subside. Devastated by the sudden loss of her grandchildren, Dafu's mother fell ill and passed away 6 months later. Dafu's father was equally heartbroken, visiting places where his grandchildren used to play daily, hoping to find traces of them. Unfortunately, he fell from a small bridge one day, suffering severe internal injuries that ultimately led to his death. A once peaceful family was suddenly shattered by an unexpected tragedy. As time passed, Dafu gradually accepted that he might never find his wife and children. In his family genealogy book, he made 2 notations about the disappearances. For his eldest son Yongyong, 1994, taken by mother and disappeared. For his younger son Yongquan, 1994, taken by mother and disappeared. However, one morning after 18 years, Dafu unexpectedly received a call from the local police station. The police informed him they might have found his eldest son. Dafu felt both confused and emotional. On September 8, 2012, while working as a laborer in Guangzhou, Guangdong province, Dafu's phone was constantly ringing with calls from relatives. After receiving news about his son, the usually frugal Dafu immediately bought a plane ticket and returned to his hometown in Sichuan. At the Yongxingtown police station in Kaijiang County, Sichuan province, Dafu met a Dafu and his family were convinced that Shuyang was Dafu's biological son, as his face strongly resembled Dafu's, while his chin was identical to his mother Shua Qin's. Finally, DNA test results confirmed their suspicions. The young man named Shuyang was indeed Yongyong, Dafu's son, who had been missing for 18 years. However, according to records, Yongyong was only 7 years old when he disappeared and had few memories of his hometown. How did he find his way back? Where had he been for 18 years? And what had happened to his mother Shua Qin and younger brother Yongquan? According to Yongyong's recollections, that afternoon, 18 years ago, he and his brother had followed their mother to the Yongxingtown market. Then, a man from a roadside shop waved to mother Shua Qin, and she followed him inside. Yongyong and his brother Yongquan sat on a bench outside the shop, playing while waiting for their mother to return. Soon after, loud music began playing from inside the shop, making the brothers curious enough to go in. There, they witnessed their mother being pinned to the ground by a man. Yong Yong recalled seeing another man take out a syringe and inject something into their mother's head. At this point, their mother struggled fiercely, but the man holding her down pulled out a sharp knife and stabbed her repeatedly in the back. In the following days, the two brothers were kept in a dark basement under the shop. Although Yong Yong tried to escape with his brother through a window, they were caught when they reached the courtyard wall. Yong Yong couldn't remember much of what happened next. He only recalled being put on a train. Because the journey was very long, he assumed they had been taken somewhere far away. They eventually arrived in a rural area of Putian City, Fujian Province. After a few days, his brother Yongquan was taken away by a man and never returned. Yong Yong was soon taken to another man's house, named Su Jinchi, who became his adoptive father. To conceal his identity, Jinchi gave Yong Yong a new name, Su Yong. However, as Su Yong grew older, he discovered Jinchi wasn't his biological father. He couldn't remember his birth father's name, but recalled that his father used to wear a suit and ride a bicycle to work, while his mother was a hard-working and skilled woman who cooked well and worked in the fields, and they also raised pigs. Their life was simple but warm. Regarding his real name, Su Yong said he only remembered his nickname, Yong Yong. Since becoming aware of his situation, Su Yang's desire to find his birth parents grew stronger. He kept a precious diary, with its most prominent page covered in photos from childhood to adulthood, documenting his deep longing for his family. From 2000 to 2005, Su Yong specifically preserved these portrait photos, hoping to reunite with his birth parents one day. According to Su Yong, after graduating from middle school, his adoptive father sent him to apprentice at a gemstone workshop in Guangdong Province. Initially, Su Yong earned only 300 yuan, about $45 per month, not enough for rent, forcing him to survive on 2 yuan, about 30-cent noodles once a day. He lived in daily suffering, not knowing how many more years it would take to find his birth parents and brother. To find traces of his mother and brother, he drew his childhood memories, including details of his mother's abuse. Though somewhat hazy, the horrific scene remained vivid in his mind. About 3 years later, his adoptive father Jinsi returned to his hometown in Fujian, while Su Yong stayed alone in Sihui City, Guangdong Province, continuing to work. He saved money while secretly traveling to Jiangsu, Hubei, and Hunan provinces, trying to recover memories of his hometown. Although Su Yong covered his rented room's walls with photos of cities, memories of his hometown remained elusive. During the 2012 Chinese New Year, Su Yong accompanied a friend to Longchong County, Neijiang City, Sichuan Province. While dining at his friend's home, 2 dishes suddenly triggered some memories. Su Yong said the Chinese sausage and watercress reminded him of his childhood hometown flavors. He immediately realized his birth parents might be from Sichuan Province. After determining this general direction, Su Yong registered on the Baby Come Home website. However, his story shocked the website's volunteers, and its authenticity was initially questioned by the online community. When registering, he used the name Zhao Yong Yong, vaguely remembering his surname was Zhao, or Chow. His name contained Zhao, but he couldn't remember his mother's name anymore. To help the volunteers, Su Yong drew his hometown based on scattered memories. In the picture, he depicted dragon boat racing during the festival, his deepest childhood memory. Additionally, Su Yong drew some scenes from his hometown. According to his memories, his old house was next to his second aunt's house. There was a bamboo forest beside the old house. Behind the house were 2 ponds. As a child, he often fell into them, getting covered in mud. Another vivid memory was a small bridge not far from their house, which he crossed every day to school. Under the bridge was a small stream where he and his brother often caught fish and crabs. Based on these memory clues, volunteers began searching for missing person information across Sichuan. However, 18 years had passed since Su Yang's kidnapping, and many places in Sichuan had undergone massive changes. It was truly challenging for volunteers to find the exact location based on 18-year-old scenery. To better recall his hometown memories, volunteers took Su Yong to Sichuan to visit several locations. According to Su Yang's memory as a child, he often heard his mother mention a place called Gao Street, which left a deep impression on him. Based on these clues, volunteers found a location, Baigao Town in Dazhou City, Sichuan. Along the way, volunteers asked everywhere. They questioned local residents about whether they had heard of a case where a mother and two sons disappeared in the early 1990s. Unfortunately, people there all said they had never heard of such a case. Later, volunteers and Su Yang visited the Baigao Village Committee and police station. Although local staff were very helpful, they still couldn't find any family with similar circumstances. After 7 days of continuous searching, Su Yang and the volunteers had covered all of Dazhou City. Each morning they set out full of hope, only to return disappointed in the evening. Since the search for relatives showed no progress, Su Yang dejectedly returned to Putian City, Fujian Province. He hoped to get some clues about his kidnapping from his adoptive father, Jinsi. At this moment, a middle-aged woman from Kaijiang County, Sichuan Province, suddenly called the volunteers. This phone call would uncover a secret buried for 18 years. The caller was Xiao Xieying, a resident of Kaijiang County and mother of 2 boys. One afternoon in mid-October 1993, her eldest son Wang Xiang mysteriously disappeared after school. Afterward, Xieying and her husband searched everywhere and reported to the police, but found no clues. For over a decade, she never gave up searching for her son, Xiang. While working away from home, besides regularly following missing person news, she also contacted Baby Come Home website staff and local Sichuan volunteers. In early September 2012, Xiao Xieying saw the article about Su Yang searching for his family. She thought it might be her son, Xiang, and called the volunteers. However, after several inquiries, both parties realized that the Su Yang seeking relatives in the news might be the son of a Zhao family from Yongxing Town. Learning this, the volunteers became very excited. They immediately contacted the Yongxing Town police station and confirmed that in Jinko village, there indeed was a Zhao family who had lost 3 family members years ago. Then, the police went to Dafu's house. At that time, his sister said that after seeing the photo in the newspaper, she immediately believed the young man in the picture could be her brother's long-lost son, Yongyang. On September 11, 2012, in Jinko village, Yongxing Town, people gathered at the village entrance to welcome Yongyang home. After nearly 2 hours of waiting, Yongyang finally appeared at the village entrance with the volunteers. Although firecrackers exploded loudly on both sides of the village road, Yongyang's tears wouldn't stop flowing. Facing his aged father and villagers, he was speechless. His tears seemed to say everything. After completing the family reunion ceremony, Dafu led Yongyang into a room and sat down. He took out 2 old photographs that had been carefully preserved for years and showed them to his son. Looking at the childhood photos with his mother and brother, Yongyang couldn't hold back his tears. Although the reunion atmosphere was emotional, Dafu had one question he dared not ask Yongyang. After calming down from the emotional reunion, Dafu finally gathered the courage to ask the question that concerned him most. He asked his son, "How did your mother leave back then?" Yongyang seemed to have anticipated this question, so he took out the drawings he had made and told his father about the horrific scene from 18 years ago. After hearing Yongyang's account, Dafu was silent for a few seconds, then said in a deep, determined voice, "Son, I will definitely find your brother and mother. This is my only wish now." Therefore, that afternoon, Dafu took Yongyang to the Kaijian County Police Bureau to file a report. Based on Yongyang's account and some materials he provided, the police officers in charge first confirmed the truth about his kidnapping. However, to reconstruct the details of the horrific case from 18 years ago, the police still needed to find more criminal evidence. Since Mother Shuachin and brother Yongquan were still missing and their survival status unknown, the police decided to first investigate Yongyang's kidnappers to trace the entire case. On September 13, 2012, the Kaijian County Police Bureau sent 2 investigators with Yongyang to Putian City, Fujian Province. In a village called Hoji in Putian City, Kaijian police found Yongyang's adoptive father and asked about the kidnappers from that year. However, Jinchi was very cold, saying it had been at least 20 years since he'd seen that kidnapper, and he no longer remembered what he looked like. Faced with Jinchi's resolute non-cooperation, the case officers felt very helpless. Therefore, Yongyang decided to ask other villagers. As a result, most villagers also spoke ambiguously, clearly unwilling to reveal information about the kidnapper. The two investigators had to turn to the local police station, requesting them to dispatch officers to assist in the investigation. According to Yongyang's recollection, he had stayed in another man's house for some time before his adoptive father took him home. But Yongyang didn't know where this man lived or his name. He only remembered the man's house had a loft, with something like a temple shrine upstairs. At that time, Yongyang was locked in the loft, and he saw villagers frequently coming to burn incense and worship. To find the kidnapper's specific location, local police called Jinchi in for questioning again. This time, Jinchi clearly showed more cooperation with the investigation. According to his recollection, that year a middleman named Ahei had approached him, saying there was a child about 6 or 7 years old in nearby Gaoyang village, asking if he wanted to adopt. Then Jinchi had followed this middleman to another man's house. Jinchi said he paid a total of 5,800 yuan, about $850, and took Yongyang away. However, unfortunately, this middleman had now developed age-related memory loss and couldn't provide any more related clues. Therefore, police had to take Jinchi to Gaoyang village in Beigao town to point out the kidnapper's residence. According to Jinchi's recollection, the kidnapper was named Wang Jianhei, a local from Gaoyang village. Compared to that year, although Gaoyang village had undergone many significant changes, after searching house by house, Su Jinchi finally led police to Wang Jianhei's house. Over the years, Wang Jianhei's house had been rebuilt into a multi-story building, but the small temple shrine upstairs remained almost identical to its arrangement from 18 years ago. However, faced with police questioning, Wang Jianhei only admitted to Yongyang being adopted by Su Jinchi that year. Regarding the kidnapping, he chose to remain silent. To find a breakthrough, the investigating officers decided to first investigate Wang Jianhei's social relationships. They quickly made a rather surprising discovery. Through investigation, police learned that Wang's wife was also from Kaijiang County, Sichuan Province, and had also been kidnapped and brought here, growing up before marrying Wang. According to her statement, over 20 years ago, a man nicknamed Pian Naokai had kidnapped her. Later, she witnessed other children being brought to Wang's house multiple times. Through further investigation, police quickly identified the real name of this Pian Naokai as Zheng Jixian, 58 years old, from Xinyang Town, the same hometown as Yongyang. Related documents showed that Zheng Jixian had previously been sentenced to 6 years in prison by the Kaijiang County People's Court for child kidnapping. Sentenced with him were 2 other accomplices, one of whom was Pu Sanhua, the man Dafu had suspected of kidnapping his wife and children. Based on this connection, Kaijiang police believed Zheng and Pu were likely the perpetrators who kidnapped the 2 brothers Yongyang that year. Therefore, after interrogating Wang, police quickly arrested Zheng. Simultaneously, they also quickly went to Pu's house. He was now 51 years old. During initial questioning, Pu quickly admitted that the kidnapping of the 2 brothers Yongyang that year was indeed his doing. However, regarding the whereabouts of Shua Qin, Yongyang's mother, he still hadn't confessed the truth. He only revealed the 3rd suspect was Liao Dingji. To quickly apprehend Liao, police immediately went to his residence for a surprise arrest. However, unexpectedly, the cunning Liao Dingji had caught wind of the news and fled beforehand. According to Pu's confession, Liao was actually his blood brother. Although adopted into the Liao family from childhood, he had always maintained an unbreakable relationship with the Pu family. Therefore, after searching all the Liao family's connections, police went to Pu relatives' homes in the neighboring town. Sure enough, they found Liao hiding there. In the interrogation room, Liao honestly told investigators, "I want to ask for the government's leniency. I'm willing to confess all crimes." Then, Liao detailed the entire criminal process from 18 years ago. The time went back to early July 1994. Due to financial difficulties, Liao had gone to Pu's house to borrow money. Unexpectedly, Pu once again proposed the kidnapping plan they had contemplated many times before. Pu told Liao that kidnapping a child could earn them several thousand yuan, and this money also sparked Liao's evil intentions. According to Pu's plan, Liao was responsible for observing targets on the street, then luring them to his shop before taking action. However, Liao had observed for several days without finding a suitable target. Therefore, Pu proposed an even more vicious plan. He said if they saw adults with children, they could kill the adults first, then kidnap the children to sell. On July 12, 1994, Liao saw Shuiqin leading her two sons passing by Pu's house. Therefore, Pu actively stepped out to greet Shuiqin, saying he needed her to deliver a message to someone in Jiankou village. Without suspicion, Shuiqin followed Pu into the shop. To easily subdue Shuiqin, Liao first turned a cassette player's volume to maximum to mask any upcoming sounds. Unexpectedly, the cassette player's sound attracted the two brothers Yongyong to run in. In a bedroom behind Pu's shop, Liao first strangled Shuiqin and pinned her to the ground. At this point, Shuiqin struggled violently, so Pu pulled out a knife and stabbed her. After killing Shuiqin, Pu and Liao locked the two brothers Yongyong in the basement. About a week later, Pu contacted the human trafficker Zheng. Through Zheng's arrangement, the two brothers Yongyong were put on a train. They first went to Beijing, then transferred to Puchun City, Fujian Province. As for their mother Shuiqin, she had been dismembered by Pu and Liao and finally buried in a vegetable garden behind Pu's house. Around 10 a.m. on February 28, 2013, police brought suspect Pu to a bicycle repair shop on Baigao Street, Yongxing Town. Around them, local residents had gathered in large numbers, hoping to learn the truth about the case as soon as possible. At the vegetable garden behind the shop, many residents had surrounded the body excavation site. Although Pu had confessed to all crimes, police still needed to find victim Xiao Shuiqin's remains. According to Pu's confession, that year he and Liao had divided the body into 3 bags for burial. In 2008, he had dug up 2 bags and burned them. The burning location was in a corner of the courtyard. To ensure no criminal evidence was overlooked, technical staff meticulously crumbled each piece of dug-up soil. They carefully washed every fragment suspected to be bone. Besides some chicken and pig bone fragments, police also found some important evidence, including a fragment suspected to be human skull, some ashes from burning, plastic bag pieces used to wrap the body, and a rope used to tie the body. However, based on this evidence, technical staff still couldn't prove the victim had been buried in this garden. Their only hope was finding the 3rd unburned bag. But the case had occurred 18 years ago, and Pu said he couldn't clearly remember where the 3rd bag was buried in the vegetable garden. In this situation, the investigation team had to decide to dig about 3 feet deep across the entire garden. As a result, they quickly unearthed a plastic sandal. This sandal had basically melted with only the sole still showing a bit of white color. By evening, a final black plastic bag was found. Inside was a bag of bones that, when assembled, formed the lower extremities of a human. DNA testing later confirmed these were Xiao Shuiqin's bones from 18 years ago. At this point, the case investigation had results, and Zhao Yongyang had through his efforts brought justice for his mother. However, his brother Zhao Yongquan was still missing. To continue tracing related clues, police decided to return to Putian City, Fujian Province. This time, the human trafficker Wang led them to the family who had bought Yongquan that year. However, after deeper investigation, police discovered that Yongquan had been sold 3 times. According to Wang's confession, he had initially sold Yongquan to a local named Siafa for 7,500 yuan, approximately $1,100. Later, Siafa saw Yongquan constantly crying and felt unsafe, so through another middleman, he sold him at a lower price to a man named Chun, also a middleman, who then sold Yongquan to a man surnamed Wu. Through subsequent investigation, police learned that after Yongquan arrived at the Wu household, he was renamed Wu Qingfa. However, when police brought Yongyang to the Wu household, Wu Qingfa was working in Beijing. After confirming through photographs, police helped Yongyang successfully contact his brother, Yongquan. On March 20, 2013, Yongyang finally found his long-lost brother Yongquan and brought him back to their hometown in Sichuan. After 19 years, the case was finally solved, and the 2 lost sons finally returned home. For their aging father Dafu, if the eldest son Yongyang hadn't found his way home, perhaps the truth of this case would have remained buried forever. On August 14, 2014, the Dazhou City Intermediate People's Court issued its initial verdict. Defendant Pu Jijian was sentenced to death for the crimes of intentional homicide and child kidnapping. Defendant Liao Dingjie was sentenced to life imprisonment for the same crimes. Additionally, Pu Jijin and Liao Dingjie were ordered to compensate the civil plaintiffs 50.897.50 yuan, approximately $7,500. After sentencing, defendants Pu Jijin and Liao Dingjie, dissatisfied with the verdict, immediately appealed in court. On April 20, 2015, the Sichuan Province High People's Court issued its appeal verdict, rejecting Pu Jijin and Liao Dingjie's appeals and upholding the original sentence. On November 24, 2014, another defendant, Zheng Jixian, was sentenced by the Kaijin County People's Court to 11 years in prison and fined 10,000 yuan, approximately $1,500, for kidnapping women and children. The illegal proceeds from his criminal activities would continue to be recovered. After successfully finding his family, the elder brother Zhao Yongyang chose to return to Sihui City to continue his work at the gemstone workshop to make a living. The elderly father Zhao Dafu brought his new wife back to Jiangsu village, where they raised ducks and worked in the fields to maintain their livelihood. The younger brother Zhao Yongquan chose to settle in Beijing. Although the family had reunited, they still had to live separately in 3 different places because the beautiful days from 18 years ago could never return. Story 3. On a fateful afternoon in August 1967, residents of Taipei's Wanhua district witnessed a startling scene. A man, drenched in sweat, burst into the local police station. His name was Jiang Jing'en, and between labored breaths, he began telling a story that would leave every officer in the station stunned. "Last night, I was forced to help bury 2 bodies, Jing'en blurted out, immediately drawing the officers' full attention. As his story unfolded, a horrifying crime came to light. At Chikai Art Garden, a mannequin factory located at 51 Kongding Road, the owner, Wang Wenmin, had murdered both his wife and an apprentice. Jing'en claimed he had been coerced into helping dispose of the bodies, which were now buried in the factory's basement. Initially, the police were skeptical of this bizarre claim. The idea of real bodies being buried in a factory that made artificial ones seemed like something out of a horror movie. Moreover, Kongding Road was in one of Taipei's busiest commercial districts. Who would dare commit murder and conceal bodies in such a crowded area? What made the officers even more suspicious was Jing'en's behavior. For someone claiming to be an accomplice, he seemed unusually eager to confess. The officers also noticed something off about his demeanor. He didn't seem entirely mentally stable. Despite their doubts, the police had to investigate. They brought Jing'en to Chikai Art Garden, a 4-story building where each floor served a different purpose. A beauty salon on the 2nd floor, residential apartments on the 3rd and 4th floors, and the mannequin factory occupying both the ground floor and basement. According to neighboring businesses, the factory was highly successful, supplying mannequins to fashion stores throughout Taiwan. They operated almost constantly, rarely closing even on holidays. That's why it struck everyone as odd when 2 days earlier, owner Wenmin had suddenly announced the factory would be closed, posting a "Closed Today" sign on the door, something completely out of character. When the investigation team arrived, several reporters were already on scene. After repeatedly knocking with no response, the police were forced to break down the door. As soon as the door gave way, police and reporters flooded into the building. The ground floor featured a display window containing 6 plastic mannequins. Though officers thoroughly searched this level, they found no bloodstains or signs of struggle. Finding nothing on the main floor, the group descended to the basement, where Jing'en claimed the bodies were buried. The scene that greeted them was unsettling. Dismembered mannequin parts scattered everywhere, arms, legs, heads, and torsos strewn about, while the air was thick with the pungent smell of isoamyl alcohol used in mannequin production. Faced with this eerie tableau, police began to theorize that Jing'en might have been affected by the toxic environment. The combination of harsh chemical fumes and the grotesque appearance of the disassembled mannequins could have caused him to hallucinate, mistaking plastic parts for human remains. However, Jing'en, his body trembling, insisted on pointing to a specific section of the concrete floor, maintaining that the bodies were buried beneath. Initially, the floor showed no obvious signs of having been disturbed. But while everyone was still puzzling over this, one detective made a crucial discovery in the bathroom, a pile of what appeared to be freshly excavated soil. Additionally, under the display case upstairs, they found cement and fine sand, materials that had nothing to do with mannequin production and were typically only found at construction sites. When these discoveries were cross-referenced with Jing En's testimony, investigators began to suspect his story might have merit after all. The police decided to excavate the concrete floor, bringing in 4 mortuary workers with specialized equipment to handle the task. Almost immediately, they found something disturbing. The steel reinforcement bars beneath the concrete had been deliberately cut. Then, at about 8 inches deep, they made a chilling discovery: a fabric glove. The atmosphere at the scene grew increasingly tense. As they reached a depth of roughly 20 to 28 inches, the workers encountered something unusual. When they lifted it out, they realized it was human hair. Immediately after, the unmistakable odor of decomposition filled the air, confirming the investigators' worst fears. There were indeed bodies buried under the floor. From this point on, the excavation proceeded with extreme caution to preserve evidence and protect the integrity of any remains for future forensic examination. At 11 p.m., they uncovered the first body, a woman with no visible external injuries. Just 30 minutes later, they found the second body, a male. Unlike the first victim, this body showed clear signs of violence. The face and body were bruised and swollen, with distinct strangulation marks on the neck. The bodies had been stacked in the pit, with the female victim placed on top of the male. Fortunately, both victims' faces were intact enough for identification, confirming Jing En's story. The female victim was Su Huan, Wenmin's wife, and the male was Chen Guofeng, an apprentice at the factory. The medical examiner's report revealed that both victims had died approximately 2 days earlier, with asphyxiation as the cause of death. However, one peculiar detail caught the investigators' attention. Su Huan's head had been shaved, and the hair they'd found during excavation was confirmed to be hers. This raised an intriguing question. If Jing En's account was true, and Wenmin was the killer, why would he shave his wife's head? As police prepared to arrest Wenmin, they realized they'd made a critical error in their investigation protocol. Their initial skepticism of Jing En's story had led them to skip securing the suspect before searching the premises. As a result, by the time they confirmed the truth of his claims, Wenmin had already fled. Even more shocking were the rumors circulating in the district. Local residents claimed that during the excavation, Wenmin himself had been among the onlookers, disguised and watching as police unearthed his victims. In the chaos of the crowded crime scene, officers had failed to recognize him. This revelation was a devastating blow to the police department's reputation. Police immediately issued a nationwide warrant for Wenmin's arrest. To understand the motivation behind the murders, investigators began digging into the backgrounds of both the perpetrator and his victims. Wenmin, 31, despite lacking formal education, possessed remarkable artistic talent, particularly in mannequin crafting, and had built a solid reputation in the fashion industry. His wife, Su Huan, 1 year his junior, had met him at a billiard hall. They had 3 children together, but their marriage had been marked by frequent arguments and tension. The male victim, Chen Guofeng, was just 18 years old and had nearly completed his apprenticeship when he was killed. The investigation began with interviews of 3 apprentices who were on leave from Shirkai Art Garden. While none could explain their employer's motive for murder, they revealed a crucial detail. Recently, Wenmin had discovered 2,000 NDT, about $65, missing and had a violent argument with his wife. The dispute had escalated beyond verbal abuse. He had physically attacked her and shaved her head. 3 days before the murders, on the evening of August 3rd, Wenmin had abruptly announced he knew who had taken the money and gave all employees a week's vacation. The apprentices had barely begun their unexpected break when police appeared at their doors. Finding the apprentices' information limited, investigators expanded their inquiry to the victims' families, hoping to uncover any underlying conflicts with Wenmin. The first stop was Guofeng's family. They revealed that before his death, Guofeng had confided that Wenmin suspected him of having an affair with his wife and had beaten him. Despite his parents urging to quit, Guofeng had insisted on his innocence, believing that suddenly leaving would only intensify his employer's suspicions. Next, investigators approached Wenmin's family, hoping to gather more insight. Their conversation with Wang Jinjie, Wenmin's sister, provided crucial information about the family's troubled past. Zhenjie disclosed that 4 years earlier, while Wenmin was away for military training, his wife Su Huan had begun an affair with a neighboring pharmacist who had a questionable reputation. What made matters worse was that the pharmacist had convinced Su Huan to give Wenmin a drug that, while not lethal, would render him impotent. During this period, Wenmin had noticed severe problems with his sexual function, but couldn't understand why. Despite consulting numerous doctors, he found no solution to his condition. A year later, the pharmacist tried to exploit Su Huan again. This time, he attempted to convince her to work as a hostess at a bar in Kaohsiung, promising good money. Su Huan firmly refused, ending their relationship. This incident seemed to be a turning point, making her realize the gravity of her actions. She eventually decided to confess everything to her husband. Upon learning the truth, Wenmin immediately reported the pharmacist to the police, resulting in appropriate legal consequences for his actions. However, even after justice was served, the betrayal continued to haunt when Min Jinjie also revealed another significant detail. Before disappearing, when Min had borrowed about 5,000 NDT, about $165 from her. She had given him the money without hesitation. With these new pieces of information, investigators began forming a clearer picture of the case. They theorized that when Min's trauma from his wife's past infidelity had led him to suspect a relationship between her and Guofeng. This paranoia could have been the primary motivation for both murders. While this theory seemed plausible, it remained speculative. The police's most urgent task was still locating Wenmin. Initially, police were confident about capturing him quickly. They had 3 reasons for this optimism. First, Wenmin had no known connections to organized crime. Second, he had fled with only 5,000 NDT. And third, Taiwan's island geography made escape particularly challenging. However, another complicated aspect of the case demanded attention: Jingen's role in the murders. As both an alleged accomplice and the informant, his motives required careful scrutiny. Why did he choose to confess? Was he truly coerced, or had he been a willing participant in the murders, who later turned informant due to some dispute? To resolve these questions, the police split their investigation into 2 teams. One focused on tracking down Wenmin, while the other concentrated on interrogating Jinzhen more thoroughly. During questioning, Jinzhen provided a detailed account of the fateful night. According to him, around 10 p.m. on August 4th, Wenmin had suddenly appeared at his house in a state of distress. Wenmin claimed his wife had been missing for 2 days, and that despite reporting it to the police, there had been no leads. He said he planned to search for her in Taichung, and asked Jinzhen to accompany him. Without much thought, Jinzhen agreed. The 2 men rode a motorcycle to Taipei Station. Once there, Wenmin suddenly remembered he needed to retrieve something important from the factory. They returned to Chikai Art Garden. However, as soon as they entered, Wenmin locked the iron gate and revealed the horrifying truth. His wife had done something unforgivable, and he had killed both her and an apprentice. He needed Jingen's help disposing of the bodies. Jinzhen claimed he panicked and tried to flee, but Wenmin threatened him, saying the bodies were under the bed and he wouldn't hesitate to add a third. With no escape route, Jinzhen said he was forced to help drag the bodies from the bedroom to the basement, placing them in a pre-dug hole. They began filling the hole, a task that lasted until dawn. When daylight broke, Jinzhen thought his nightmare was over and asked to leave, but Wenmin wasn't finished. He forced Jinzhen to accompany him to buy cement, quick-drying agents, and isoamyl alcohol to refinish the floor and erase all evidence of their crime. While Wenmin was busy mixing cement, Jinzhen seized his chance to escape. Following his survival instincts, he ran straight home and hid in his wardrobe, not daring to make a sound. Wenmin searched his house but, fortunately, failed to find him and eventually left. However, Jinzhen realized his home wasn't safe. By afternoon, he fled to his brother's house seeking refuge. Too terrified to explain coherently what had happened, he just frantically urged his brother to call the police. Before his brother could react, Wenmin appeared at their doorstep. Jinzhen was forced to escape through the back door and ran straight to the police station. Although Jingen's testimony seemed credible and was validated by the discovery of the bodies exactly where he indicated, deeper analysis revealed several troubling inconsistencies. The first major discrepancy concerned the physical disparity between the men. Jin Zhen was a blacksmith with a large, robust build and considerable strength. In contrast, Wen Min was relatively slight, standing only about 5 feet 3 inches. Given this physical advantage, it seemed implausible that Jin Zhen would be so easily intimidated by Wen Min. Another suspicious element was the sequence of events. In disposing of the bodies, digging the hole was arguably the most challenging part, yet Wen Min had completed this alone. This raised the question, why would he need help with the relatively easier tasks of moving and burying the bodies? Furthermore, involving an outsider like Jin Zhen seemed counterintuitive, essentially creating an unnecessary witness to his crimes. Confronted with these inconsistencies, police questioned Jin Zhen again. This time, he dramatically changed his story. Jin Zhen admitted he hadn't been coerced at all. The truth was that Wen Min had promised him money, and in a moment of greed, he had willingly helped conceal the bodies. However, he claimed that shortly after, his conscience got the better of him, prompting his confession to the police. During their deeper investigation, police discovered that Jin Zhen actually suffered from mental health issues. Years earlier, he had sustained a head injury in a car accident that affected his nervous system. While he could maintain basic daily activities and social interactions, his thought processes and manner of expression were noticeably different from the norm. Furthermore, investigators learned there was a family connection between the two men. Jingen's brother was Wen Min's brother-in-law, and Wen Min had even introduced Jin Zhen to his wife. Considering Jingen's mental condition and the family ties between them, it made more sense why Wen Min might have chosen him for help. However, this also raised a new concern. Given Jingen's mental state, how reliable were his statements? This made finding Wen Min even more crucial. He was the key to unraveling the entire case. Police were so confident about catching Wen Min that they didn't even offer a reward for his capture. However, as the investigation progressed, things became increasingly complicated. After searching throughout Taipei and expanding their investigation to Taichung, police still couldn't locate Wen Min. Just as they were growing frustrated with the lack of progress, a new development made the case even more complex. A man named Yang Gongquan rushed to the police station to report that his wife Lu Wang had disappeared and was likely with Wen Min. Yang's family ran a wig-making business and had frequent dealings with Wen Min's mannequin factory, which was how the families knew each other. Lu Wang, 30, was a mother of 5, with her youngest still nursing. Gongquan had 2 reasons to suspect his wife's disappearance was connected to Wen Min. First, they had disappeared on the same day, and second, neighbors had witnessed Lu Wang getting on Wen Min's motorcycle before they rode away. Gongquan feared his wife might have been coerced or even kidnapped. This report opened a new avenue of investigation. When police searched the Chikai Art Garden again, they discovered intimate photographs of Lu Wang among Wen Min's belongings. The photos appeared to have been taken with Lu Wang's consent, suggesting their relationship was more than casual. Further investigation revealed that when Lu Wang left, she had taken her ID and some cash with her. Based on interviews with her children, police concluded she hadn't been kidnapped or coerced, but had willingly fled with Wen Min. This discovery made the police's task even more challenging. Now they weren't just looking for a fugitive murderer, but one accompanied by a willing companion. Throughout August, the fugitive couple became Taiwan's most talked about story. The public was eager to see them captured and brought to justice. However, their whereabouts remained a mystery. Rumors placed them everywhere from southern Taiwan to the central regions, and even in Sanjiang. Police had no concrete leads. Initially, investigators thought that by blocking their access to bank accounts and preventing family assistance, the 5,000 new Taiwan dollars Wen Min had taken would soon force them out of hiding. Police warnings were published in multiple newspapers, stating that anyone harboring the couple would be charged with aiding and abetting criminals. However, these measures failed to draw them out, leaving law enforcement increasingly frustrated. On August 16th, 10 days after the murders, police intercepted a letter from Wen Min to his father. The front of the letter, written in Chinese, appealed for sympathy for his 5 children and requested his father give Gongquan about 2,000 NDT for living expenses. However, on the back was a message in Japanese saying, "Don't give the money." This was clearly a deception by Wen Min, taking advantage of Lu Wang's inability to read Japanese to secretly instruct his father to withhold the money. Rather than delivering the letter, police released its contents to the press through reporters, hoping to create discord between the fugitives. Police investigation had shown that Lu Wang had been home with her children during the murders and wasn't involved in the killings. They hoped that exposing Wen Min's deception would convince her that fleeing with him had been a mistake and persuade her to return home. In addition, the police also let Lu Wang's husband Gongquan publish an open letter in the newspaper. Gongquan promised in the newspaper that if Lu Wang returned, everything would be forgiven. Their eldest daughter also wrote a letter herself saying, "Mom, my sister and brother are both crying. I miss you so much." However, these efforts did not move Lu Wang. Wen Min and Lu Wang were still missing. Thus, the police's efforts had not yet yielded any important clues. Many people began to question the police's ability. On August 24th, with no other choice, the police offered a reward of 30,000 NDT, about $750, for anyone who could provide Wen Min's location, which could lead to his arrest. However, Lu Wang's neighbors pointed out that the photo of Lu Wang released by was an old photo taken after the birth of her fifth child, when she looked chubby, while now she had lost a lot of weight. Such photos were of no help at all in the search. The police then revealed another important feature of Wen Min, saying that he had a strange disease and needed to drink herbal tea regularly in the summer. This information caused herbal tea stalls across Taiwan to be packed with people, hoping to find Wen Min and receive a reward of 30,000 NDT. Since the reward announcement, the police have received more than 160 tips, but unfortunately, none of them were useful. Just when everyone thought that the case might become a suspended sentence, on August 30th, there was a dramatic turn. Wen Min suddenly sent a letter to the United Press. In the letter, he described his difficult life as a fugitive and expressed his strong desire to return to his family. He also emphasized in the letter that he did not intentionally kill his wife Su Huan and practitioner Guofeng. He admitted to assaulting his wife but claimed that he did not realize that her injuries were serious enough to require emergency treatment, which ultimately led to her death. Wen Min also said that if the Lianhe newspaper published his letter, he and Lu Wang would turn themselves in to the Criminal Investigation Department the next day. The Lianhe newspaper published Wen Min's letter early in the morning of August 31st. That evening around 11 o'clock, Wen Min and Lu Wang did indeed appear. The two took a taxi to the police station door, held hands, and turned themselves in. From the photos in the newspapers the next day, the two looked clean and tidy, not like they had just run away. Especially Lu Wang, she clung tightly to Wen Min's side. It turned out that during the time they were on the run, Wen Min and Lu Wang had been hiding in a small house near the Nanmen police station in Hsinchu City. Wen Min even borrowed a bicycle, wore a conical hat, and sold herbal tea along the road every day. While everyone was waiting at the herbal tea stalls, hoping to catch Wen Min and receive the 30,000 NDT reward, they did not expect that Wen Min was hiding right in front of them. The two men surrendered, finally making the police breathe a sigh of relief, but the problems of the case were not over yet. When Wen Min was questioned, he admitted that he had indeed assaulted his wife, leading to her death due to not being able to receive timely medical treatment, but firmly denied any involvement in Guofeng's death. On the contrary, he insisted that the person who killed Guofeng was Jing Zhen, the person who had initially reported him. Wen Min recalled that a week before the incident on July 24th, he discovered that 2,000 NDT was missing from his pocket. Suspecting that his wife had stolen it, he began searching everywhere and found a bottle of perfume in a drawer. He immediately became angry, thinking that this bottle of perfume was a gift from some lover to his wife, thus confirming that his wife must have had an affair. In a fit of rage, Wen Min used rope to tie up his wife, beat her, and interrogated her. Not only that, he also cut Su Huan's hair to prevent her from going out to meet other people. After this violence, Su Huan was seriously injured and had to stay in bed. On July 31st, practitioner Guofeng brought food to the injured owner Su Huan. Wen Min happened to see the two whispering to each other. He immediately suspected that they had an illicit relationship. Therefore, he immediately tied up Guofeng, beat her, and interrogated her. So, what did Su Huan and Guofeng really talk about that day? According to Guofeng's family's testimony, when they saw Guofeng injured that day, they asked what happened. He explained that when he brought food to his boss that day, she secretly told him that Wen Min suspected him of stealing 2,000 NTD and beat her every day. If this continued, she would be beaten to death. So she asked Guofeng to help her seek help from outside. Unfortunately, this whispering conversation was caught by Wen Min, causing him to be brutally tortured by his boss. After hearing it, his family advised him not to go to work anymore. But Guofeng insisted that he was innocent and decided to go back and explain clearly to Wen Min. When he confronted Wen Min again in order to prove his innocence, Guofeng told him that the person who really had an illicit relationship with Su Huan was not him, but Wen Min's brother-in-law, Jing An's brother. At this time, Jing An was also present at the scene. Hearing this, he flew into a rage and immediately refuted Guofeng. "You are the one who has a relationship with your sister-in-law, and you still want to blame my brother." In a fit of rage, Jing An beat Guofeng up. In order to prevent Guofeng from screaming, he also covered the victim's mouth while punching and kicking. Seeing this, Su Huan quickly spoke up to stop him, making Wen Min even angrier and turning to beat his wife. During the fight, Guofeng stopped breathing, and Su Huan died shortly after. Wen Min and Jing An realized that they had both committed the murder, so they went to buy digging tools and cement together and disposed of the body together. Wen Min admitted that the whole incident from beginning to end was done by him and Jing An together, and that he had not killed the person alone, and then asked Jing An to help dispose of the body. However, he did not expect that Jing An would report it to the police the next day. Wen Min recounted that when he saw the police and reporters rushing into the store, he realized that he could no longer hide it. At this time, he hurriedly ran to his lover Lu Wang, asking if he had killed someone and needed to escape, wondering if she wanted to go with him. Lu Wang agreed without hesitation, took her ID card and some cash, and set off on the run with him. After reading the newspaper reports on the case, Wen Min felt that the press had reported it seriously, so he decided to turn himself in. He asserted that the truth was not as described in the press. These statements were completely different from Jing An's. Jing An claimed that he only participated in burying the body, while Wen Min said that Jing An killed Guofeng, and then the two of them disposed of the body together. However, Wen Min's statement also had many unreasonable points. The forensic report indicated that Guofeng died from strangulation. If Wen Min said that Guofeng was beaten to death, then how should the traces of strangulation on the body be explained? This contradiction became a key point in the subsequent trial. On October 18, 1967, the case was brought to trial by the Taipei District Court. Although Wen Min insisted that Su Huan's death was an accident, the court did not accept this justification. Therefore, Wen Min's death sentence was almost certain. The main point of contention in the case was whether the whistleblower Jing An actually killed Guofeng. In the first instance, the Taipei District Court held that the deaths of Su Huan and Guofeng were both caused by Wang Wenmin, who suspected the two of having an illicit relationship and had the intention to kill. Jing An was only forced to participate in burying the body, so he was declared innocent and released. However, the prosecutor did not agree with this verdict and appealed. Over the next 9 years, Jing An's verdict alternated between guilty and innocent. It was not until March 16, 1976, that the Supreme Court made its final judgment, declaring Jing An guilty of murder. The decision was based on the fact that Jing An had told other inmates in Taipei prison 2 sentences. "I wish murder would only be a life sentence, and because Chen Guofeng was nosy, I strangled him." In addition, the judge pointed out that during the course of the incident, Jing An had many opportunities to escape, but he did not choose to leave halfway and only ran to his brother's house after he had finished disposing of the body. The judge thought that if he was truly innocent, why didn't he escape earlier? This showed that he was not completely innocent. Based on these doubts, the court finally found him guilty of intentional homicide and sentenced him to life in prison. As for Wen Min, during the 9 years of trial, his death sentence was always upheld, and he was executed by firing squad on the 4th day after the final verdict. However, at that time, the public was no longer interested in Wen Min's fate. Everyone's attention turned to the woman who had run away with Wen Min, Lu Wang. Everyone wanted to know why a mother of 5 children would abandon her family to follow a man who had just killed his wife and fled. Through investigation, everyone learned that Lu Wang and Wen Min had known each other since childhood and were childhood sweethearts. They shared a common interest in painting, and their personalities were very compatible. Lu Wang later married Gan Quan, but their marriage was not a happy one. Story 4. Around 5:30 p.m. on July 9, 2007, a concussion explosion shattered the peace on Jinshe Road in Jinan City, Shandong Province, China. The force of the blast had completely destroyed a Honda car, scattering the driver's body parts, some of which were found on the windows of nearby stores. A nearby taxi also caught fire, leaving the driver severely burned. Due to the severity of the explosion, a fruit vendor near the car was also injured, struck in the neck by debris, and requiring over 10 stitches. The entire neighborhood was in chaos. Bystanders gathered, speculating wildly. Some thought it was a routine traffic accident, while others suspected a fuel tank explosion from a collision. But could an ordinary accident or fuel tank explosion have caused such devastating destruction? This question began to take root in the minds of the witnesses. Just minutes after the explosion, the police arrived at the scene. Through preliminary investigation, they confirmed 1 fatality, 1 pedestrian injury, significant damage to a taxi, and 2 other vehicles completely destroyed. With such a serious explosion occurring in the bustling city center, the investigators' urgent task was to determine the cause. Was this an unfortunate accident, or did a darker plot lie behind it? As the investigation delved deeper, the detectives realized the truly grave nature of the case. They discovered this was not a random explosion, but one carried out using TNT, a tightly controlled military explosive. This detail immediately revealed a terrifying truth. This was a premeditated murder. Through forensic analysis, the victim's identity was quickly established. She was 31-year-old Lu Haiping, residing in a luxurious 1,400 square foot apartment in the Rue residential community. The destroyed car was a brand new light blue Honda. But what drew the investigators' attention was not the victim's affluent lifestyle, but her unique status, a senior political cadre at the Jinan Municipal Land Resources Bureau and the Deputy Secretary of the Youth League Committee of the agency. News of the horrific death of a female state official in the bustling streets quickly spread, triggering an earthquake of public opinion in Jinan. The case was immediately elevated to a higher level of investigation. Agonizing questions began to surface. Who could have harbored such deep hatred to use such a brutal method to kill a government official? And what led Lu Haiping to pay the ultimate price? While it seemed that all traces had been erased by the explosion, a surprising discovery opened the first breakthrough in the investigation. In a trash can near the scene, the investigators found a shattered mobile phone and a remote-controlled device. After extensive cross-referencing with telecom providers, they were able to identify the owner of the phone's SIM card as Chen Ji, a 50-year-old deputy team leader of the 3rd Squadron of the Jinan Municipal Public Security Bureau. This clue became even more suspicious when linked to the use of TNT, a tightly controlled military explosive that only those in special positions could access. As the investigators were considering this connection, another team of police, through questioning of local vendors and residents, learned that a police car had appeared near the site just before the explosion. Through the surveillance camera system and other investigative methods, they quickly determined this car belonged to the security team where Chen Ji was employed. In a covert investigation, the detectives examined this police car and confirmed that some of the residues found in the vehicle matched those from the explosion. This suggests that after using the car to commit the crime, the perpetrator had failed to thoroughly clean the vehicle, leaving a significant amount of explosive powder on the person and footprints of the culprit inside the police car. The security team and other units also confirmed that on the day of the incident, only Chen Ji's vehicle had appeared near the scene. All evidence was now pointing towards this deputy team leader. Another team of police had searched the victim Haiping's home and discovered more suspicious information, helping the investigation move closer to the truth. In Haiping's residence, the investigators found many photos, including one of her young son, some family photos, and surprisingly, intimate photos of Haiping with a man. The shocking discovery was that the man in the photos was Duan Yihei, the director of the Standing Committee of the Jinan Municipal People's Congress. Why were Yihei's photos in Haiping's home? The nature of their relationship in those photos was clear without further explanation. There was only one possible explanation. Ihe and Haping were lovers. But a romantic relationship did not necessarily relate to the murder case. The police still needed to investigate further. With the initial hypothesis of a murder motivated by love or hatred, the investigators identified three primary suspects. Haping's ex-husband, who may still harbor resentment, Chun-ji, the suspicious deputy team leader, and Ihe, the secret lover of the victim. Each of them had the motive and capability to carry out this brutal act. The circle of suspicion quickly narrowed as the police eliminated Haping's ex-husband from the suspect list. However, an unexpected discovery pushed the investigation in an entirely new direction: the special relationship between Chun-ji and Ihe. Chun-ji was not just an ordinary police officer, but Ihe's nephew-in-law. This revelation was like a lightning bolt splitting the night sky, making the investigators sense an even greater conspiracy unfolding. Just 3 days after the explosion, on July 11th, with irrefutable evidence from the mobile phone and other physical evidence, Chun-ji was arrested in Qingdao. During the interrogation, in an atmosphere of tension disguised as a tea invitation, Chun-ji quickly realized his situation. As an experienced police officer, he understood that when his colleagues had traced his whereabouts, it meant they possessed evidence he could not refute. Thus, Chun-ji quickly confessed the entire crime process as directed by Ihe. Only 4 days after the horrific explosion, an even greater earthquake had shaken the political circles of Jinan. The suspect Ihe, the incumbent director of the Standing Committee of the Jinan Municipal People's Congress, a provincial-level official, was apprehended by a joint investigation team from the Provincial Discipline Inspection Commission, the Provincial Public Security Department, and the Provincial Procuratorate. Faced with irrefutable evidence, after just 1 hour of interrogation, the powerful official's facade completely collapsed. Ihe admitted to orchestrating the explosion on July 9th, using his own nephew-in-law Chun-ji as a tool to carry out this evil plan. During the interrogation, he acknowledged his regret, but not for taking a life, only for the method he had chosen. With chilling indifference, Ihe declared that if given the chance he would still kill Haping, only he would choose a different method. In his tone, there was not a hint of remorse for the death of his former lover, only deep hatred and determination to end what he called their ill-fated romance in a way that was perfect to him. Behind those cold words lay the haunting question: what had transformed their love into such deep hatred? The answer began with Duan Ihe's testimony, as he revealed the origin of this tragedy, a fleeting romance that had begun 14 years earlier. Duan Ihe was born on January 17, 1946, into a poor farming family. His childhood was full of hardship. The early mornings cutting grass in the mist, the long days herding buffalo under the sun, the late evenings feeding the pigs. A deep scar on the back of his left hand from a wood-cutting accident remained an indelible mark of those difficult years. But poverty could not stop his ambition. Through extraordinary effort, in 1965, Ihe passed the entrance exam to enter Xi'an Jiaodong University. As the first college student from his village, he became the pride of the local community, likened to a golden phoenix taking flight from the chicken coop. Ihe did not disappoint those expectations. His college degree opened the door to his official career. With his shrewd interpersonal skills and exceptional capabilities, his career rose like a ship sailing with the wind, step by step climbing the ladder of power. At the peak of his power, Ihe maintained the simple and approachable demeanor of his peasant origins. Whenever he visited his hometown, even as a high-ranking official, he insisted the driver stop the car outside the village. Alone, he would walk the familiar dirt roads, stopping to chat with the villagers, inquiring about their lives. A journey of just a few hundred meters that could be completed in minutes would often last an hour with him. These genuine gestures made the villagers absolutely trust that Ihe was an incorruptible official, indifferent to fame and fortune. But fate has unexpected turns. Everything changed when a beautiful woman named Lu Haiping entered his life. In 1996, a new opportunity for advancement came when Ihe was transferred to Liaoqing, Shandong Province. Since his wife, who was working at a provincial hospital at the time, could not accompany him, he had to go alone. After arriving in Liaoqing, Ihe was arranged to stay in a guest house of the agency to take care of the living needs of the new official. The management arranged a young employee, Lu Haiping. She was only 18 years old that year. Lu Haiping was thoughtful and attentive, taking meticulous care of Ihei. She would wash his dirty clothes, prepare delicious meals when he was hungry, and even have his toothpaste ready. In those lonely months away from his wife, Haiping's considerate care gradually invaded Ihei's heart, sowing the seeds of an unnamed affection. For the young Haiping, Ihei represented not only a powerful official, but the embodiment of success and authority, an invisible magic that always had a strange allure for women. Gradually, their daily interactions ignited a feeling that went far beyond the ordinary relationship between an official and a servant. Ihei was 48 years old, while Haiping was only 18. This significant age gap seemed to foreshadow the tragic ending of their relationship. When Ihei was transferred back to Jinan, he should have ended this illicit affair. But unable to part with his young lover, he committed his first abuse of power. He arranged for Haiping to be transferred to work at a company under the Shandong Provincial Electronics Industry Bureau, and bought her a private apartment, creating a parallel life alongside his official family. Ihei treated this mistress quite well. As he advanced, he did not forget to bring his young lover along on the climb up the social ladder. In late 1997, when he was promoted to a higher political rank with greater power, he used his influence to place Haiping in a position at the Civil Affairs Bureau. Not only that, he also bought her another apartment and a car. Under the shadow of Ihei's power, Haiping quickly built a luxurious life in Jinan. Her name suddenly carried weight, even making other officials show her some respect. Not only enjoying this newfound wealth, Haiping also cleverly seized the opportunity to take care of her own family. She brought her parents and younger sister to Jinan, and through whispers on the pillow, she persuaded Ihei to arrange jobs and household registration for her relatives. Haiping's insatiable greed had led the once incorruptible Ihei down the path of corruption. To satisfy her constant demands, he was forced to start accepting money to expedite matters. When rumors of his corruption reached the ears of Ihei's wife, her reaction surprised many. Instead of demanding a divorce, she chose to persuade her husband, hoping he would stop before it was too late. In front of his wife, Ihei pretended to listen and declared he had cut ties with Haiping. But behind those promises, he continued to cheat, turning his relationship with the young lover into an even more carefully hidden illicit affair. To deceive the public, Haiping even married a doctor. But in reality, the two continued their secret trysts. The truth was finally exposed when the doctor husband discovered this hidden relationship and filed for divorce. Ironically, Duan Ihei not only destroyed his own family, but also contributed to the collapse of his lover's marriage. The sense of betrayal and injury gradually transformed into an insatiable greed in Haiping's heart. If she could not possess this man's heart completely, she was determined to exploit his power to the fullest. In her mind, a twisted logic took shape. If she could not have his love, she would demand as much material wealth as possible as a guarantee for her own precarious future. In 2006, with ever-growing ambition, Haiping requested a job transfer. As usual, Ihei abused his power to transfer her to the Land Resources Bureau. But it seemed nothing could fill the abyss of ambition within this woman. She continued to demand a luxurious 1,400 square foot apartment and the latest car model. This was the residence and car she was using when the incident occurred. Haiping's greed was not simply a desire for material goods, but rooted in the loneliness and resentment that had accumulated. In the vast and cold apartment, she lived a shadowy existence, waiting only for Ihei's hurried visits at 10 o'clock at night. After years of living in the darkness of their illicit affair, Haiping craved an official status, wanting to marry Ihei and stand beside him openly, no longer having to hide behind the walls of deception. But for Ihei, from the very beginning, she was just a fleeting romance, never to become his legitimate wife. The arguments between them grew increasingly violent, and in her anger, Haiping began to use their secret relationship as a double-edged sword, threatening her older lover. This had enraged Ihei greatly. He felt that after he had elevated Haiping so much, she had become ungrateful and unappreciative. Therefore, he began to seek ways to eliminate this threat. Haiping's threats were like strong winds blowing at the tree of Ihei's power. The fear of his secret being exposed gradually transformed into a dark intent in his mind. Though he tried to suppress it, the thought of eliminating this threat continued to smolder in his heart, waiting to erupt. In his daily work, Ihei silently sought someone to carry out this plan. This person had to be not only trustworthy enough to keep the bloody story secret, but also bold enough to execute it. After many sleepless nights, he decided to choose his nephew-in-law, Chinji. As the son-in-law of Ihei's elder brother, Chinji owed a considerable debt of gratitude to Ihei, who had used his power to secure the police officer's position and help him advance. This familial relationship, reinforced by privileges and benefits, was an invisible chain binding their fates. In Ihei's eyes, this was the perfect tool for his sinister plan. In 2007, when Chinji visited Ihei's home for the Lunar New Year, Ihei spoke to him about his troubles and expressed a desire for him to deal with Haiping. Chinji immediately agreed, saying that since his work was all arranged by Ihei, he naturally had to help him solve this problem. After discussion, they decided to eliminate Haiping through a staged traffic accident. But they later found that Haiping's activities were mostly confined to the city center, where it would be difficult to gain enough speed. If they acted carelessly, not only would they fail to kill Haiping, but they could also expose their own identities. Therefore, this plan was abandoned. With the first plan failing, Chinji came up with another idea. As a former military engineer, he knew how to manufacture explosives. He thought of using an explosive device to resolve this issue. After the explosion, all traces of the crime would be completely erased, a seemingly perfect strategy. After Chinji shared this idea, Ihei also found it to be a good one. He provided Chinji with detailed information about Haiping, such as her home address and car keys. As a police officer, Chinji easily exploited his network of connections to obtain the controlled explosive. He had a good relationship with a garage owner named Chin Changbing, 40 years old, who was skilled in remote control car devices. In the privacy of the garage, the two began their deadly experiments. The first 2 detonation tests were carried out to practice, leaving the final 3 triggers for the real act. Along with 2 kilograms of explosives and a remote control they had secretly constructed, they created a weapon that could tear apart metal and flesh in an instant. But as the murder weapon was completed, something in Chinji's conscience suddenly awakened. He began to hesitate before the destructive power of what he had created. The thought that a simple button press could take a life, leaving no chance for redemption, began to haunt his mind. Though Ihei constantly urged him on, Chinji continued to find ways to delay. In July 2007, Chinji could no longer postpone it. On the afternoon of July 9th, Chinji and Changbing drove the police car to the area where Haiping worked. Holding the bomb, they quickly located Haiping's light blue Honda. With trembling hands, they used Duan Ihei's remote control to open the car door, then carefully placed the deadly bomb under the driver's seat. In just a brief minute, they had completed the entire process. As it was their first time doing something like this, after placing the bomb, they hastily left the scene. On the road where Haiping usually drove home, the 2 evil perpetrators held their breath, waiting for their target. But fate played a cruel trick. After just 5 minutes of surveillance, they lost sight of the victim. Chinji decided to take a desperate final move. Driving to Jianshe Road, the familiar route Haiping always took. Here, they patiently waited for her to pass by. Chinji, with a shaky hand on the remote control, sat silently in the police car, waiting for the signal to activate the devastating device, while Changbing got out to observe, ready to signal when Haiping appeared. At the time, there were many vendors and elderly people sitting and enjoying the cool air. To ensure Haiping would pass through here, Changbing even casually asked an elderly woman sitting nearby, "Is this the Rui residential community up ahead?" This seemingly innocuous question, coupled with the unusual tense expression and accent of the strange man, caught the old woman's attention. A few minutes later, Haiping's light blue Honda appeared on the street that afternoon, unaware of the impending tragedy. Changbing quickly made the call. Just seconds later, a horrific explosion tore through the peaceful evening air. The devastating power of the blast not only destroyed the car and its occupant, but also injured a street vendor nearby. This was the explosion on July 9th in Jinan that shook all of China. While the panicked crowd rushed and scrambled in chaos, a pair of keen-aged eyes did not miss an unusual detail. The strange man with the unfamiliar accent had hurriedly jumped into a police car and disappeared into the chaotic traffic. Noticing this peculiar detail, the elderly woman managed to jot down the license plate number of that police car, a seemingly minor detail that would become a key to unlocking the secret of the case. On July 13th, he was taken away from his office. Within an hour, he had confessed everything and provided a long list of his social connections. After the trial, the court determined that he had abused his position to receive and demand property from others, totaling 1.69 million yuan, approximately $250,000 in cash, and 1.33 million yuan, approximately $195,000 in assets of unknown legal origin. Thus, a bomb explosion had led to the exposure of corruption among government officials, and the investigation began to expand. In this tragedy, Changbing had shown herself to be no passive pawn. With the keen instincts of someone who had weathered many storms, she had sensed the tragic fate awaiting her. Before her destiny was sealed, she had told her family, "If I die, it is certainly Yi who killed me." He had also thought he could use his power to conclude the incident as an accidental death due to the hot weather causing a fuel tank explosion, but he did not realize that the distance to his own death was only 59 days away. After the incident, he was quickly arrested, but he did not think he would be sentenced to death. He thought they would give him a chance at rehabilitation to enjoy his old age. Therefore, throughout the interrogation, he remained quite relaxed and cooperative. During the questioning, he even recounted his entire 61-year life story. In the interrogation room, the three perpetrators revealed different faces before justice. Changbing, with a miserable expression, desperately pleaded, citing the moments of hesitation before attaching the explosive device as evidence of his intention to abandon the crime. Chen Ji, trying to avoid the death penalty, repeatedly claimed he was just a victim of Yi's coercion. As for Yi, he admitted his guilt. However, when the prosecutor asked him if he regretted it and what he would do if given another chance, his answer chilled even the seasoned investigators. "I do regret, but only for choosing to use explosives. If given the chance to do it again, I would still kill her." In fact, this was not the first time Yi had plotted to eliminate his lover. He said he had previously planned to kill her through gas poisoning, tire blowout on the highway, and many other methods, but all had failed. There was one time when Yi Ping's car had a flat tire before getting on the highway, and Yi not only failed to kill her, but had to take responsibility for fixing her car. Ultimately, the court sentenced the defendant Duan, Yi and Chen Ji to death, while the defendant Chen Changbing was sentenced to life imprisonment. The romance between Lu Heping and Duan, Yi showed that the 30-year age gap was not just a number, but a chasm that could not be filled by money or power. When selfish love intertwined with corrupted power, tragedy was inevitable. Story 5. On March 9, 2023, Jia's mother visited her daughter's home in Yaidanjiwan to clean. While tidying the bedroom, she noticed a refrigerator in the corner covered with miscellaneous items. Seeing that it hadn't been cleaned for a long time, she decided to clean both the inside and outside while her daughter was away. Clearing away the clutter, she removed the sealing tape from the fridge and opened it. On the top shelf, she found some frozen beef and lamb. However, at the bottom of the fridge, she noticed a large object. Clearing away the remaining items, she discovered something horrifying: her son-in-law, Fan Hengwei, who had been missing for 15 months, frozen solid alongside the meat. Upon finding Fan's curled-up body in the fridge, Jia's mother was paralyzed with fear and immediately ran out of the room to call her daughter. When Jiao returned home and saw her panicked mother, she realized her secret, hidden for over a year, had been exposed. She confessed to her mother that she had killed her husband and stored his body in the refrigerator. Following her mother's insistence, Jia called the police and turned herself in. News of the Suzhou refrigerator murder case quickly went viral on social media, shocking the nation. The couple had been newlyweds striving for their careers, yet after 15 long months of lies and deception, their story turned into a horrifying tragedy. The victim, Fan Hengwei, was born in 1991 in Huainan, Anhui Province. He was the second of 3 brothers in a family that started from humble beginnings. His parents had worked tirelessly, selling pancakes from a 3-wheeled cart to raise their sons. Among the 3, Fan was the most successful. After graduating high school, he was admitted to Suzhou University, becoming the pride of his family as he worked hard to live up to their expectations. However, his post-graduation career wasn't ideal. After several job changes, he landed a position as a real estate broker in 2015. Initially, his family and friends didn't understand his choice, as the job didn't seem to align with his academic background. In their eyes, he had chosen the wrong career path. But it didn't take long for Fan to prove that his decision was well-founded. At the time, Fan foresaw the potential in the real estate industry. In October 2016, shortly after starting his career, Suzhou implemented real estate regulations such as purchase restrictions and loan limitations. Before these policies took effect, residents of Suzhou, and even people from other regions, were eager to buy property in the city. The real estate market was so hot that houses sold almost instantly after being listed, and brokers could make significant profits. Fan Hengwei, as a real estate agent, entered the market at the perfect time. The demand was so high that many clients proactively contacted him to purchase homes, resulting in an exceptionally high transaction closure rate. Combined with his strong work ethic, he achieved remarkable success, earning a substantial income. Thanks to his outstanding performance, he was promoted to a managerial position at his company. Not only did his career thrive, but Fan also found the love of his life. In 2016, shortly after starting his job, he met Jia, a colleague 2 years younger than him. Born in 1993, Jia was a native of Suzhou. She was perceived as introverted and quiet. As they spent more time together, their affection gradually grew. On February 20th, 2017, they officially confirmed their romantic relationship. After they started dating, Fan often shared their happy moments. He added his girlfriend's initials to his online ID and, on the 20th of every month, posted memories of their time together. On special occasions, Fan created romantic surprises. Over 17 months, he meticulously documented their moments together and frequently expressed his love for Jia, fully immersed in the reciprocate the same enthusiasm toward Fan's romantic gestures. Her online account mainly reflected her personal life, featuring posts about her favorite celebrities and entertainment news, along with occasional negative or profane remarks. Rarely did she interact with her boyfriend online, except for one post in late 2018 about attending a Jackie Chung concert, where they had secured front-row seats. Jia's lack of engagement online mirrored her behavior in real life. Fan's older brother once discreetly remarked about her aloofness, noting that Jia was reserved, rarely smiled, and maintained a distant attitude toward Fan's family. From his perspective, he believed Fan deserved someone better. However, considering Jia was a Suzhou native from a well-off family that had received compensation for redevelopment projects, he ultimately refrained from voicing his concerns. In 2019, Fan used his savings, supplemented by support from his parents, to purchase a home in Suzhou. That same year, Jia discovered she was pregnant. In early 2020, they registered their marriage, and on February 3, 2020, their daughter was born. Fan's Weibo posts, which previously focused on his relationship with Jia, began documenting his daughter's milestones. From her birth to sleepless nights spent soothing her, he posted a total of 32 entries about her growth. During this period of career advancement, Fan found additional motivation in his daughter. He took on the responsibility of supporting the family, allowing Jia to stay home and care for their child. Confident in his career, Fan decided to leave his job to start his own business, aiming for greater success. After leaving his job, Fan joined a brand under one of the country's leading real estate brokerage companies. Leveraging his years of experience, he began managing and operating his own real estate brokerage firm. However, starting in 2020, as he embarked on his entrepreneurial journey, the real estate industry began to face challenges due to the pandemic and other factors. The once thriving market started to slow down, casting a shadow over his family's future. As his business struggled and his income fell short of expectations, family issues began to surface. Initially, Jia Dongli's quiet personality turned colder. For instance, after giving birth, Fan's mother, Jia's mother-in-law, came to care for her for a month, yet during that entire time, Jia never addressed her as mother. Such indifference puzzled everyone. Fan believed Jia's attitude stemmed from the fact that they had not yet held a formal wedding ceremony, which remained a lingering issue in his mind. Concerned about his wife potentially experiencing postpartum depression, Fan arranged a wedding ceremony on October 1, 2020. Following the ceremony, The couple moved into Jia's family's relocation apartment in Yaidanjuan, just about 2 miles from their real estate brokerage. However, cracks in their relationship began to appear soon after. For days after their wedding, they had a heated argument when Fan accidentally woke their daughter, who had just fallen asleep, by entering the bedroom. Still upset after the argument, Jia vented her frustrations on Weibo, using vulgar language that demonstrated her lack of respect for her husband. As time went on, the real estate market entered a challenging phase. By 2021, older properties in Suzhou were brought under stricter management regulations. These new conditions made transactions increasingly difficult, forcing many small real estate businesses to struggle for survival. Small brokerage firms, including Fan's, were ultimately forced to shut down, cutting off his family's income. Despite this financial strain, Jia became engrossed in watching live streams and developed an uncontrollable habit of sending extravagant virtual gifts. Obsessed with the idea of becoming a top-ranking fan for certain streamers, she indulged in this behavior without restraint. While the family's income had been severed, Jia secretly continued spending money online, adding invisible financial pressure to the household. A tense and suffocating atmosphere quietly developed between them. In 2021, the couple decided to try their hand at online entrepreneurship. On September 19th, they registered a cultural media company, planning to create content reviewing local businesses and generate income through live stream sales. However, their efforts failed to gain much attention. They also took on some minor gigs to boost video views, but continued to struggle in this field. Meanwhile, Fan discovered that Jia had been sending expensive gifts to male streamers online. By October 2021, Fan confided in his brother during a trip back to their hometown, revealing that Jia had spent hundreds of thousands of yuan gifting streamers. Jia explained that these gifts were different from standard in-app purchases. If she could become the top contributor for a streamer, she would earn a VIP account, which she claimed could be used to review and rate restaurants and other venues. As a result, the money was lost, and Jia realized she had been scammed. The promised refunds never materialized. The funds she used had been borrowed or charged to credit cards. It's unclear how Jia dealt with this crisis, but Fan ended up selling the house he and his family had purchased before their marriage to pay off the debt. Fan's family was puzzled by this turn of events, but gradually understood that Fan and Jia were facing financial difficulties. On November 24, 2021, Fan Hongwei returned to his hometown of Huainan to pay respects to his ancestors before traveling back to Suzhou alone. His family could not have imagined that this would be their final meeting with him. By December 2021, approximately 20 days later, Fan's family found it increasingly difficult to contact him. He stopped answering phone calls and video chats, responding only through text messages. Fan's mother grew worried, but could only ask Jia about his whereabouts. Jia explained that due to business failures and mounting debts, Fan had left Suzhou to escape creditors and was too afraid to contact his family. Since their business had indeed been struggling, the family initially accepted this explanation. Occasionally, Fan's WeChat moments were updated, and when the family asked about him, they even received location shares, which somewhat reassured them. During this time, Jia frequently comforted Fan's family, urging them not to worry too much. She claimed the couple remained in contact, and that Fan would return once their financial troubles were resolved. However, over the next 2 months, Fan began asking his family for money. The first request was for 30,000 yuan to cover overdue rent. The second was a plea for help to repay a 43,000 yuan loan he had supposedly borrowed from his mother-in-law before leaving. In total, numerous reasons were given to request financial support. Fan's family was not wealthy, but each time Fan texted asking for money, whether it was a few thousand or tens of thousands of yuan, his mother sent the funds, hoping it would help him overcome his difficulties and return home soon. The brutal truth, however, was the chilling reality revealed at the beginning of this story. By then, Fan was already curled up in the refrigerator at his home. The person who had been maintaining contact with Fan's family and persistently requesting money was none other than Jia, the quiet and reserved woman they all knew. As time passed, the Lunar New Year of 2022 arrived. Fan's parents visited their son's home, only to find that he still had not returned. Their granddaughter frequently expressed how much she missed her father, which broke their hearts. After having a meal and sitting for a while, the couple left. Later, Fan's brothers received another request for money, this time to cover installments for a home loan. By now, 3 months had passed since their last contact with Fan, and the family finally realized something was seriously wrong. Yet, they still didn't suspect Jia. They believed instead that Fan might have fallen victim to a pyramid scheme. After discussing the situation, they decided to report the case to the police, together with Jia. On February 24, 2022, the local police station in Phan Hungwei's district received a missing person report. Fan's family visited the station 4 times to inquire about the case, but Jia Dongli repeatedly obstructed the investigation. On one hand, she proactively told the police that her husband had fled to escape debts, was working far from home, and that they were still in regular contact. She even claimed that Fan frequently communicated with his friends and colleagues. On the other hand, she reassured Fan's family, saying that he likely avoided them because he didn't want them to see him in his diminished state. With no significant progress or adverse findings from the police investigation, Fan's family reluctantly accepted Jia's explanation. They even felt sorry for her, believing she was struggling alone to raise their daughter, while Fan's supposed escape from debt left them living in hardship. Fan's older brother grew increasingly frustrated and sent an angry message to his younger brother, scolding him for failing to call home to assure them of his safety. He even questioned whether the person replying to the text was really Fan. Despite his demands, the responses remained limited to text messages with no calls. As the agonizing wait continued, the Mid-Autumn Festival of 2022 approached. Fan's parents planned to visit Yaidanjiwan to see their granddaughter, but Jia's mother informed them that 2 months earlier, Jia had suddenly moved out with her daughter. She had taken only the television and refrigerator, and had not even informed her own mother of her departure. Concerned by the sudden disappearance, Jia's mother reported the situation to the police. The police quickly traced Jia to a rental apartment in Xinqing district. When Jia's mother visited her there, Jia appeared annoyed and refused to explain her reasons for moving. Unable to persuade her, Jia's mother eventually returned home. Fan's parents, worried about Jia and their granddaughter, decided to visit the apartment on the morning of the Mid-Autumn Festival to celebrate together. During their visit, Fan's older brother noticed the refrigerator that had been moved from the previous home. The refrigerator was plugged in but sealed shut with tape, which struck him as unusual. However, out of respect for Jia, he refrained from asking questions. In October 2022, Jia suddenly returned with her daughter to their former home. By the Lunar New Year of 2023, she even took her daughter to Fan's hometown to celebrate. Jia reassured the family that their debt problems were nearly resolved and expressed confidence that Fan would soon return. Clinging to this fragile hope, Fan's family endured another holiday without him. On March 8, 2023, 15 months after Fan's disappearance, the family received a message from him stating, "I plan to come home next month." Their relief was short-lived. The very next day, on March 9th, Jia's mother discovered the secret that had been hidden for 15 months inside the refrigerator. Following her mother's insistence, Jia confessed to the police and was immediately arrested. Authorities conducted an autopsy on Phan Hungwei. According to information obtained from media interviews with Fan's relatives, the cause of death was determined to be drug poisoning and carbon monoxide poisoning. Jia had later placed his body in the refrigerator. The specific timeline and details of what occurred that day remain undisclosed. When questioned about her motive, Jia simply attributed it to family disputes. Needless to say, the money Fan's family provided to help resolve his debts ended up in Jia's hands. She deceived Fan's parents into giving her 200,000 yuan, borrowed 50,000 yuan from his younger brother, and even obtained 120,000 yuan from her own parents under the pretense of helping Fan. In total, she swindled 370,000 yuan, roughly equivalent to $50,000 based on current exchange rates. The reason for her insatiable need for funds was her uncontrollable spending habits, primarily driven by her obsession with sending extravagant virtual gifts to streamers. This financial strain may have been the catalyst for her decision to murder her husband. Even after killing her husband, Jia continued to be an avid fan of a music streamer, climbing to the top of his fan leaderboard. To express his gratitude for her unwavering support, the streamer dedicated several posts to her. Jia's relationship with the streamer placed her far ahead of other fans in terms of interaction and recognition. The streamer prominently acknowledged her in his music content. On the platform, Jia's account achieved the rank of Duke, a title requiring at least 30 million experience points, equivalent to spending a 300,000 yuan on virtual gifts. Reports indicate that this streamer also resided in Suzhou. A few months after Fan's murder, Jia began interacting with him more frequently. Unlike the reserved, quiet persona known to her acquaintances, Jia appeared active and even flirtatious in her interactions with the streamer. Her Weibo posts during this period hinted at an emotional entanglement, with melancholic reflections that seemed to stem from a romantic involvement. It became clear that these feelings were not directed toward her deceased husband. Netizens speculated that Jia and the streamer had a questionable relationship, as the large sums of money she deceitfully obtained were voluntarily spent on gifts for him. Amid public outcry, the media company representing the streamer issued a statement denying that Jia had spent 300,000 yuan on him. They also claimed that Jia met the streamer after Fan's death, asserting that the marital conflict between Jia and Fan had no connection to the streamer. When pressed by the media, the streamer responded with a single statement, "I didn't know she was married." However, Fan had reportedly discovered his wife's reckless spending on streamers and her mounting debts before his murder, suggesting that Jia might have been supporting multiple streamers. During this time, Jia's short video account was frequently updated. In the digital world, she carefully curated her videos, featuring scenes of gourmet dining, gaming, traveling, and reflective captions. All the while, she lived in the same house as her husband's corpse. This behavior revealed a chilling lack of remorse or guilt. She calmly posted selfies and wrote soul-healing captions, seemingly convincing herself of her own narrative. However, the police believe that for a seemingly gentle woman to go from conceiving the idea of murder to carrying it out, there must have been something that pushed her beyond her mental limits. These limits, for most people, are often tied to money, relationships, or family dynamics. Based on the available information, Fan Hongwei was a loving father, a dutiful son, and a family-oriented individual. He was willing to sell their home to pay off debts resulting from his wife's poor decisions, which ultimately led to him being swindled out of hundreds of thousands of yuan. There is no evidence to suggest that Fan was extravagant or had personal lifestyle issues. If the murder stemmed from irreconcilable conflicts caused by his mistakes, Jia, as the more vulnerable party, would not have needed to hide anything. Moreover, her continued deceit toward Fan's family afterward clearly indicates where the fault lies. Jia appeared to lack affection for Fan, at least after their marriage. The unplanned pregnancy seemed to have hastened their union. Combined with the failure of their business, she was unhappy in the marriage. Outwardly, she tried to maintain the appearance of normalcy, but inwardly she relied on something to compensate for her dissatisfaction. This became a secret she hid through lies, a secret that likely contradicted the image she presented to the world. Fan may have uncovered her true nature through certain events. This realization could have made Jia feel unprecedentedly threatened, prompting her to eliminate him to avoid exposure. At its core, the crime leans toward a premeditated silencing of the victim. Jia likely understood that her lies about Fan fleeing to escape debts would eventually unravel. Her unrelenting, fraudulent behavior afterward was, in essence, her last hurrah. On December 21, 2023, the Suzhou Intermediate People's Court held a trial for Jia on charges of intentional homicide and fraud. The court did not announce the verdict immediately. After the hearing, Fan's family stated they would not forgive the defendant. Their demands included the maximum penalty and full compensation for the financial losses they had suffered. The question of whether Xiaodong will face the death penalty has become a topic of public interest. While she turned herself in, this does not automatically guarantee leniency. In many death penalty cases, even when defendants confess, the courts may rule that the confession alone is insufficient to warrant a lighter sentence. This case has drawn comparisons to the 2016 Shanghai freezer murder, in which Zhou Xiaodong hid his wife's body in a freezer for 105 days. Zhou eventually surrendered to the police but was sentenced to death. Other mitigating factors that might reduce a sentence include forgiveness from the victim's family, being pregnant, or making significant contributions to society. For Xia, only forgiveness from Fan's family could apply. However, Fan Hengwei's family has refused to grant forgiveness or waive their civil compensation claims, demonstrating a firm resolve to hold her fully accountable. At this point, the court needs to determine whether Zhou planned the crime in advance. If it is proven that she used pre-prepared poison, this would qualify as premeditated murder. Following the act, her efforts to conceal the crime, evade investigation, exploit the victim's identity for fraud, and show no remorse demonstrate an extremely malicious and deliberate intent. Although the court has not yet delivered a verdict, considering the severity of this heinous crime, the need to create a deterrent effect in society, and the precedent set by similar cases, Zhou Xiaodong is highly likely to receive the death penalty. However, the final outcome or the possibility of an appeal reversing the decision remains uncertain until the official sentencing.
In addition, YouTube's algorithm prioritizes videos with many likes and subscriptions. So, if you enjoyed this video, please click the like and subscribe buttons to help more people see and know about this content. Thank you for watching and listening.